The views expressed on the following broadcasts do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT, Take 12 Radio, or our affiliates. The opinions on this show should not be considered as medical, psychological, or professional advice and are those of the host, co-host, and guest. Take 12 Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting are not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
One day at a time with its failures and fears, with portion of pain and burden of care, we must meet.
Welcome to Walking Through the Language of the Heart, a journey into the Grapevine writings of Alcoholics Anonymous co-founder Bill W. And now, here are your co-hosts, Chris S. and the Monty'man.
Well, greetings one and all. Hello, family. How the heck are you? Well, that sound just dropped off right there. Well, I don't know what's going on. We were just talking about technology, too, and all the benefits of it. Hey, Chris S. is on the line with us here, and we are broadcasting yet another episode of Walking Through the Language of the Heart. Chris, I have a question for you.
Sure.
What is acceptance?
When somebody in the recovery continuum here's the word acceptance, they get brought back to that story that's in the back of the book. Acceptance is the answer. And if I remember right, that was written by Dr. Paul O.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes on and on. Whenever there's anything wrong, this is something wrong with me, and acceptance is the answer, and nothing happens in God's world by mistake, and all that stuff that a lot of people reference in the meetings, not really understanding that it's a person's personal experience. It's not Alcoholics Anonymous. It's someone sharing their personal experience, and so often you get that you get people who believe that they need to practice that kind of acceptance to have an AA program, and that's pretty far from the truth.
So,
listen, acceptance is a powerful tool, and we'll learn a little bit about what Bill has to say about it as we get going, I think.
So here's a question for you. There's a lot of urban legends in AA, right? People will say, tell a story or something about something that happened, and you go, wow, that was really cool. But did it really happen? There's been several that I've heard. One of them I'll refer to just for fun and for free is the urban legend, and you tell me if you think this is an urban legend. The urban legend that said that Bill said that he was going to change anything in the big book, he would have changed the part where it said, he would have changed certain wording to must instead of should. I don't know if that's true or not. For instance, you must find him now. For instance, in how it works. Is that an urban legend?
So I've heard both sides of that. So I don't know that I have a definitive answer. I haven't seen it in Bill's words.
Yeah.
That he would have done that. But I've heard people say that they heard him share it. So
the one I
take that with a grain of salt.
The one I heard about acceptance was that the author of that said if they would have rather had not said that after it had been printed, and they would have rather have said that God is the answer to all my problems today instead of acceptance. And I thought, I like that, but is it true?
I do know something about this because I know some people who fellowshipped with him. The man who took me through the steps was right around the corner and knew Dr. Paul real well and had many conversations with him. And what he basically told me was Dr. Paul got a hard time with
Really?
this, right? Yeah, someone would go up to him and say, "My 4-year-old child just died of cancer," uh, and you're saying everything happens in God's world. Nothing happens by mistake, and I should accept. So he would get a lot of that, and I believe that he wished he didn't open himself up to the
Mm.
bullseye, by basically saying this, and I'm sure there's even more people that were helped with this particular philosophy, though,
Yeah.
than hurt.
Yeah. Interesting stuff.
Yeah, yeah. We come from an interesting group of people.
Yeah.
You you wouldn't want them, unattended in your house when you're not there, but
No.
they're interesting.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
All right, so this is from page 269 in the book, Language of the Heart, which I appreciate so much more than I ever have doing these podcasts with you, Monty, because we unpack them, we dig deep into them, we
Yeah.
discuss them, and we really feed on these, and I am staggered by the wonderful writing. There'll be a paragraph that will just leap out at you, being just so profound and perfect for the spirituality necessary for the alcoholic. That it's staggering, and I'm really really having a good time. So this
Yeah.
particular article is what is acceptance. It was written in March 1962, way before Dr. Paul wrote, acceptance is the answer.
Yeah.
So let's see what Bill has to say about it. All right. One way to get at the meaning of the principle of acceptance is to meditate upon it in the context of AA's much used prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Essentially, this is to ask for the resources of grace by which we may make spiritual progress under all conditions. Greatly emphasized in this wonderful prayer is a need for the kind of wisdom that discriminates between the possible and the impossible. We shall also see that life's formidable array of pains and problems will require many different degrees of acceptance as we try to apply this valued principle. So Bill already knew people were going to come at us with some things that were
Mm-hmm.
difficult to accept.
Mm-hmm.
My husband beats me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Someone has just framed me for a felony. I mean, there are going to be some really really difficult things to accept, and they'll require many different degrees of acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
He's taking that into account. That's interesting. They didn't take that into account in acceptance is the key or acceptance is the answer or whatever
Yeah.
it's called. All right. Sometimes we have to find the right kind of acceptance for each day. Sometimes we need to develop acceptance for what may come to pass tomorrow, and yet again, we shall have to accept a condition that may never change. Then, too, there frequently has to be a right and realistic acceptance of grievous flaws within ourselves and serious faults within those about us, defects that may not be fully remedied for years, if ever.
Wow.
Now, personally, I've been working on this a lot. 95 times out of 100, it doesn't matter how a person comes off or what their attitude is or their personality. I remain unaffected, but every once in a while, there'll be a connection, like there'll be a peer at work or something, and I still will connect to the other person's defects of character and dwell on them as if I personally am above such nonsense. And there's probably 20 articles that we've read when we started this that shows how immature that kind of a spiritual
Yeah.
attitude is.
I want to say something here. Okay,
Sure.
so the right and realistic acceptance of grievances, flaws within ourselves, and serious faults within those about us, defects that may not be fully remedied for years, if ever. So I was in a Zoom meeting Wednesday, and the whole thing of 6 and 7 was the topic, and there was much talk about defects of characters being removed immediately. Some people said that some of them, the Big Book says that doesn't allude to the fact that they'll all be taken away, and someone else said, yeah, it does. It says that they'll all be taken away. According to this, though, it doesn't. Bill's saying that we may have defects that may not be fully remedied for years, if ever. What do you think?
So I think the reference in the Big Book is: are we ready to have him take all of them? Right.
Right.
And so I think the spiritual exercise is to be ready to have him take all of them, or pray to be willing to have him take all of them. I don't think it says anywhere that God takes them all.
I don't either.
As a matter of fact, I think God uses some of our character defects. I
Absolutely.
think some of them hang around, because they're useful. They help us be effective out there. I'm not talking about rage or anything like that, but maybe a little bit of ego or a little bit of pomposity allows us to really step in front of a lot of people and share with them. Where if we had perfect humility, we would just sit in a corner and let everything happen. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think as far as defects of character removal, I think we place ourselves in the best environment for their removal. We ask God to remove them, but we then place ourselves in the best environment for their removal, and that is making a list of the people and institutions that these character defects have harmed, and making direct amends to the people
I agree.
and institutions. That's where we can be, a working part of this.
Sure.
All right. All of us will encounter failures, some retrievable and some not. We shall often meet with defeat, sometimes by accident, sometimes self-inflicted, and at still other times dealt to us by the injustice and violence of other people. Most of us will meet up with some degree of worldly success, and here the problem of the right kind of acceptance will be really difficult. Then there will be illness and death. How indeed shall we be able to accept all these? Now Bill was really, really struggling with some stuff that's referred to in the article we read a couple months ago, emotional sobriety. All right. And in that essay, he's talking about being connected to outcomes, and having our emotional state be directly impacted by outcomes. If it's a good outcome, we feel good. If it's a bad outcome, we feel bad.
Right.
And so Bill recognized that that's an immature kind of approach to an emotional experience. If we have faith, then we're going to understand the good, the bad, whatever comes at us. God has a plan. So he struggled a lot with this kind of stuff. You can see him like in the first paragraph of the essay, Step 12, in the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. He talks about us aiming toward this emotional recovery, wherein our emotional state is not going to be dependent upon externals.
Yeah.
It's going to be dependent upon our internal life. And he struggled with that. He knew that was the ideal and that was the goal, and he worked toward that his whole life, and probably did a better job than you or I ever did with it, Monty. So, is it always worthwhile to consider how grossly that good word acceptance can be misused? It can be warped to just justify nearly every brand of weakness, nonsense, and folly. For instance, we can accept failure as a chronic condition forever without profit or remedy. We can accept worldly success pridefully as something wholly of our own making. We can also accept illness and death as certain evidence of a hostile and godless universe. With these twistings of acceptance, we AAs have had vast experience. Hence, we constantly try to remind ourselves that these perversions of acceptance are just gimmicks for excuse making, a losing game at which we are, or at least have been, the world champions. Wow. Wow. So, so lately I've been referring to alcoholism, leaving aside the alcohol question, leaving aside the bottle, alcoholism presenting as a toxic experience of self-consciousness. We are caught so up in the past with our resentments and our shame and our guilt and remorse. And if it's not that, it's the anxiety and the self-centered fear of what's coming at us in the future, and 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 he's trying to give us all these examples of acceptance being misused, used irresponsibly.
Yeah, and I think you see it, and I've even been guilty of this. Somebody will say something, and I don't know really how to give them an answer because they're looking to me for some sort of comfort or reason why. And so I've been known in the past to go, well, I guess this comes down to just accepting the way things are. And you know what? It's kind of a cop-out. It's a little bit of a cop-out sometimes. That might be true, but is it always? You know what I mean? Instead of being empathetic to what they're going through and saying something like, that must really hurt, right? I'm going, well, it's probably just the way it's supposed to be.
So I know I've shared this story on podcasts before, right? This comes from our friend Steve L in Nashville, and I'm going to tell it again because I like the way I tell it, right? So, all right, this newcomer comes flying into a meeting, and he's all upset about something, right? And he finally gets his chance to share. And he shares, oh, man, you guys keep telling me it gets better. Keep coming, and it's going to get better. Well, let me tell you something. I'm getting kicked out of my house, and my girlfriend broke up with me, and the cops are after me, and I don't have any money. I want you all to tell me, when is it going to get better? I want to know. Right, so he shuts up, and everybody's amused, and it's a discussion meeting. So what do you get? You get people raising their hand, sharing their experiences of being really miserable in early recovery, right? And finally, the meeting's almost over, and one of the wizened elder statesmen raised their hand, and this is all he said. He goes, "Kid, it gets better when it's okay the way it is."
I love that. I absolutely love that.
Isn't that an acceptance?
Yeah.
Isn't that the heart of acceptance?
It is.
It's okay the way it is.
Yeah. You said something, I think you said something last week, and I've used it like 3 times this week. You're not allowed to worry about something that's not happening.
That's the instruction I get from my sponsor.
I love that. Absolutely love that. I've applied it one time, and 2 other times I shared it with somebody. And that's kind of a form of acceptance, right?
Well, I think it is. And I think it's a form of emotional health.
Sure.
Yeah. I just do. Now, every once in a while, you'll see one of those old timers with they've always got a smile on their face. Always got a smile on their face. Their wife died a week ago, and they're still
smiling.
in the meeting smiling. They retired, and somebody stole all their money out of their 401k. And it just doesn't seem like there's anything that can ruffle these people. They just have a glow. They annoy you. Because they're always happy. And I think rather than me still thinking they're crazy, they're not being realistic. I'm starting to think that they've gotten to a place of emotional health and healing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
is worrying about it going to make it better? Is
Yeah.
feeling bad about it going to improve the outcome? Probably not. You know, you can use that same energy that you're using ranting and raving, can use that same energy that you're expending on maybe possibly rectifying it or aiming in another direction or in a positive way.
Yeah.
So you know, it's just damaging to us to always be flipping out about stuff.
Amen.
All right. So this is why we treasure our serenity prayer so much. It brings a new light to us that can dissipate our old time and nearly fatal habit of fooling ourselves. In the radiance of this prayer, we see that defect, rightly accepted, need be no disaster. We now know that we do not have to run away, nor ought we again try to overcome adversity by still another bulldozing power drive that can only push up obstacles before us faster than they can be taken down. I love this guy's writing. You know, he would probably get a B in a creative writing class. You know, but you know what I love about it is the meaning.
Yeah.
What he's conveying with these sentences. So we know that we do not have to run away, nor ought we again try to overcome adversity by still another bulldozing power drive that can only push up obstacles before us faster than they can be taken down.
What a great picture.
You ever see a bulldozer like going through a field?
Yeah.
Boulders are coming up and it stumps. It's a beautiful visual.
That's great.
On entering AA, we become the beneficiaries of a very different experience. Our new way of staying sober is literally founded upon the proposition that of ourselves we are nothing, the Father doeth the works. In step 1 and 2 of our recovery program, these ideas are specifically spelled out. We had admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. We couldn't lick alcohol with our own remaining resources, and so we accepted the further fact that dependence upon a higher power, if only our AA group, could do this hitherto impossible job. The moment we were able to fully accept these facts, our release from alcohol compulsion had begun. For most of us, this pair of acceptances had required a lot of exertion to achieve. Our whole treasured philosophy of self-sufficiency had to be cast aside. This had not been done with old-fashioned willpower. It was instead a matter of developing the willingness to accept these new facts of living. We neither ran nor fought, but accept we did, and then we were free. There had been no irretrievable disaster. You know, that's the thing one of the things I think people really misunderstand about recovery in the 12-step process. You know, they'll see our reliance upon God as a little childish and probably naive, right?
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes what they don't understand is we can't stop drinking.
Right.
We've tried. We're serious about this not drinking thing, and we can't. We can't. And we come in and we admit that. And we start to believe that there's a better way. And we start to believe that our powerlessness can be solved with power. And that really is reasonable, rational, and an adult way of approaching a problem that on our own unaided resources we couldn't solve.
I think, and I don't know that this is true, but it seems from my experience that guys have a harder time with this I'm working on my character defects thing, right, than women do. I mean, because you guys, you know, we've got to bring home the bacon. We've got to be supportive. We screwed up for years, so now we got to fix it. And so we end up trying to do the heavy lifting, and the heavy lifting belongs to our Heavenly Father. He says it right here. It's his. And yet, you ask that trick question to your sponsee, what character defect are you working on? They may tell you, and then you can go, wrong, right?
Absolutely. And listen, we're in a separate class from other people. We're bodily and mentally different than our fellows. So, Monty, what we'll do is we'll start to go to forget the steps, forget the steps. That was 1939. I'm going to therapy. I'm going to get a therapist. Now, I'm not casting any aspersions on therapy
Right.
As a science. It's fully legitimate, filled with wonderful people who really are making a difference in many people's lives. But an alcoholic goes to them, and there's little or no progress unless there's a spiritual component behind it or
Yeah.
a recovery program behind it. I can't tell you how many people I've watched year over decade not get any better, really putting a lot of effort into therapy. Really,
And I think a lot of the
spending
reason,
a lot of money, and a lot of time.
a lot of reasons that they're not getting it is because the spiritual part, the therapist isn't allowed to go that direction, right? Because of the way it's funded.
It's not clinical, it's not scientific, and you can't reimburse for it.
Right,
know what I mean?
right.
So you get worked through shame processes. You get EMDR. You get hypnotized. All this stuff. Which is I'm not insulting it. It works for millions and millions of people. I just don't see it working for an untreated alcoholic.
Yeah, me either.
We're trying to treat alcoholism with therapy is trying to stop a semi with a cobweb. You know what I mean? It just really it is. And if I didn't have 35 years of experience watching it, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
So anyway, the kind of acceptance and faith is capable of producing 100% sobriety. In fact, it usually does, and it must. Else we could have no life at all. But the moment we carry these attitudes into our emotional problems, we find that only relative results are possible. Nobody can, for example, become completely free from fear, anger, and pride. Hence, in this life, we shall attain nothing like perfect humility and love. So we shall have to settle respecting most of our problems for very gradual progress, punctuated sometimes by heavy setbacks. Our old-time attitudes of all or nothing will have to be abandoned. Wow, he has given us a lot of rope. So
Yeah.
So we are not saints. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection.
Right.
So I will never tell you that the steps have rendered me perfect, Monty. What I will tell you is the steps have rendered me useful, and I claim spiritual progress. In all ways, I can handle the world better this year than I did last year. And I handled it better last year than I did the year before. So I and you've got the exact same experience, right?
Yes.
Things that would have bothered you unbelievably 5 years ago roll off.
Oh my gosh.
Roll off your back.
And it still amazes me. It still amazes me. I now where my parents and loved ones were always waiting for the shoe to drop. Now I do. I'm like, wow, I'm not reacting to that. In fact, I don't even care.
yeah. I don't even care. Right.
It's great. It's great.
So, therefore, our very first problem is to accept our present circumstances as they are, ourselves as we are, and the people about us as they are. Kid, it gets better when it's okay the way it is. This is to adapt a realistic humility without which no genuine advance can ever begin. Again and again, we shall need to return to that unflattering point of departure. This is an exercise in acceptance that we can profitably practice every day of our lives, provided we strenuously avoid turning these realistic surveys of the facts of life into unrealistic alibis for apathy or defeatism. They can be the sure foundation upon which increased emotional health and therefore spiritual progress can be built. At least this seems to be my own experience. And yeah, this is what he worked on his whole life. This is what he meditated on. This is what he talked to all his spiritual advisors about. This was Bill's work. This the emotional health.
Yeah.
Another exercise that I practice is to try for a full inventory of my blessings and then for a right acceptance of the many gifts that are mine, both temporal and spiritual. Here I try to achieve a state of joyful gratitude. When such a brand of gratitude is repeatedly affirmed and pondered, it can finally displace the natural tendency to congratulate myself on whatever progress I may have been enabled to make in some areas of living. I try hard to hold fast to the truth that a full and thankful heart cannot entertain great conceits. When brimming with gratitude, one's heartbeat must surely result in outgoing love, the finest emotion that we can ever know. Wow. Right acceptance. So acceptance is not the answer. Right acceptance is the answer.
Yeah. It can be so misplaced if we don't understand it.
And I don't know about you, Monty, but I see some stuff in this paragraph that I remember some old timers, like when I first showed up in the 90s, a lot of these were key spiritual components that would get shared about a lot. Like a gratitude list. Did you hear about gratitude lists when you first showed up?
Yep, and I do that with all my sponsors right in the beginning. I kind of make it tough on them, Chris. I say, listen, depending who it is, it may be 10 things, it may be 30 things. But listen, I want you to write, let's do the real hard one. I want you to write 30 things you're grateful for, and they can't be associated with each other. And so my sponsor, he says, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? I said, well, you can't say I'm grateful for church that I go to and then say I'm grateful for Jesus being spoke about in church. Too close to each other. You can't say I'm grateful for my wife and then say I'm grateful for the dinner she makes me every night. It cannot be associated. And I give an example of this one guy, and this is a true story. He wrote down on his gratitude list peanut butter. And I said, tell me about that. Why are you grateful for peanut butter? He goes, I hate peanut butter. Absolutely hate peanut butter. He goes, but while I was homeless, it kept me alive. It was the only thing I had to eat for like 8 months.
Oh, wow.
So I am so grateful for peanut butter. And I thought, see, that's what I'm talking about right there. That's tangible, man.
So I'm going off on a tangent here, but there's a speaker I love to listen to. His name is Clay T, and he's out of California, right? And there's a number of California speakers who, they're not part of the party line. They're not part of the circuit.
Right.
You know what I mean? They come from deep spiritual personal work that they've done. And this guy was talking on step 11, and he basically said this. Look, there's step 11, step 10 and 11 are key, but if you're doing them mechanically, day after month after year, and you're just doing them mechanically, you can get stuck in that. He goes, the guys that have worked through the steps with me, what I ask them to do is instead of doing, this evening review where you're looking at all the mistakes you've made and, all the ways you've fallen short, instead look at what's worked. Concentrate on what really went well in your life. Focus energy on the things that are really seem to be working well. And that resonated with me. That's kind of outside the lane that you're going to hear people share about, but it resonated with me.
Yeah.
And yes. Sometimes it's time to focus on what's working in your life instead of focusing on what's not, and putting the energy into that.
Sure.
There's a time for that.
If we're taking inventory of stock and trade, we're looking at the good stuff too, right? Because you got to keep the good stuff on the shelf, man. You don't throw that away. But so often We're tossing everything out. I'm so screwed up. I just toss all of it. Everything about me is rotten. We go too far where, the good book says there's nothing good that lives in me. No, not one thing. But we take that that's there to give us some humility, but we take it too far. It's like, well, I'm just a drunk. And you hear people say it. There's a guy I know right now. Hi, my name's Bob. I'm just a drunk. I said, Bob, are you drunk? No. When's the last time you had a drink? 23 years ago. So you're not a drunk. Well, yeah, I'm just a drunk. I'm like, I want to slap somebody. Don't get me going.
Self-limiting belief systems.
Oh my
gosh.
Right?
What Bill is asking us to do is go past those
Amen.
self-defeating belief systems.
Amen.
And I'm telling you, this thing's 1,000 miles deep. You and I have been working very, very hard on our spiritual condition per se for decade after decade after decade now, Monty. And the one thing we know is there's a ton more work to do.
Absolutely.
But how much have we progressed? How much have we progressed from the guy who sat down in the chair for the first time in the meeting?
A ton.
Immeasurable.
I know. I can't.
Immeasurable.
I can't even believe it sometimes. Really.
So
seriously.
In times of very rough going, the grateful acceptance of my blessings, oft repeated, can also bring me some of the serenity of which our prayer speaks. Whenever I fall under acute pressure, I lengthen my daily walks and slowly repeat our serenity prayer in rhythm to my steps and breathing. If I feel that pain has in part been occasioned by others, I try to repeat, God, grant me the serenity to love their best and never fear their worst. This benign healing process of repetition, sometimes necessary to persist for with days, has seldom failed to restore me at least a workable emotional balance and perspective. Well, he's touching on some of the Eastern meditation techniques which have a lot to do with repetition. Count your breaths.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of strict repetitive discipline in some of the Eastern forms of meditation, where there's a lot less in the Western forms.
Mm-hmm.
But he's showing us here where some of that repetition works. And I've used not exactly that prayer, but I've used things like that before to great effect. Another helpful step is to steadfastly affirm the understanding that pain can bring. Indeed, pain is one of our greatest teachers, though I still find it difficult to accept today's pain and anxiety with any great degree of serenity, as those more advanced in the spiritual life seem able to do. I can, if I try hard, give thanks for present pain nevertheless. I find the willingness to do this by contemplating the lessons learned from past suffering, lessons which have led to the blessings I now enjoy. I can remember, if I insist, how the agonies of alcoholism, the pain of rebellion, and thwarted pride have often led me to God's grace, and so to a new freedom. So as I walk along, I repeat still other phrases such as these. Pain is the touchstone of progress. Fear no evil. This too will pass. This experience can be turned to benefit. And this is peppered all throughout the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And I believe today that without all the pain I suffered, I would not be in the progressive environment that I am now. I would not have been motivated to take the action to participate in getting here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It talks about fear no evil. I believe this statement is accurate. I've heard it a million times. The number one directive in the good book is fear not. Number one, repeated more than any other directive. There's got to be a reason for that, because there certainly is a focus on it in Bill's writings. And so much of what we go through that we don't need to go through has its roots on fear that isn't even justifiable. Like we said about the thing about don't worry about something that's not happening. When you worry about something that's not happening, isn't that based in fear? It's like,
Yes.
why?
So I believe it goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden, Monty.
Yeah.
When we grabbed the apple off of that tree of self-consciousness, and God loved us enough to say, you want, you want to be in charge. You want to have self-will. Oh, okay, here you go.
Here you go.
Try not to hurt yourself. and you got to get out of paradise and go east to Eden to the land of Nod. You can't hang out here anymore if you got the self-consciousness. And I think it was a great gift. However, certainly alcoholics have misused it to such a great extent that we've got to turn our self-centeredness in at the door.
Yeah.
When we show up in recovery, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah, and the steps clearly lay that out. This is all about clearing away self and being of service to others. I mean, it's just that is ingrained in this. But it amazes me, Chris, even back in the Garden of Eden, God only asked us to not do one thing, just one thing. And
Can you just do me one favor?
And the one thing that we focus on, out of all the billions of things that we have been gifted, we go to that one thing and we let our egos take charge. It blows my mind.
And all of a sudden we're overrun with self-consciousness,
which
really every other, living mammal really doesn't have,
Right.
The horse is not worrying, not mad that it didn't get enough hay yesterday, and the horse is not worrying about the hay that it's going to need tomorrow. It's it's not worrying about anything that's not happening.
No.
And again, that there we are. We're these self-aware entities, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot. Though he
doesn't usually think so.
Yeah. Anyway, these fragments of prayer bring far more than mere comfort. They keep me on the track of right acceptance, and they break up my compulsive themes of guilt, depression, rebellion, and pride. And sometimes they endow me with the courage to change the things I can and the wisdom to know the difference. To those who never have given those potent exercise in acceptance a real workout, I recommend them highly the next time the heat is on, or for that matter, at any time.
At any time.
So let's try to remember it when the heat is on, but let's also try to place it within the spiritual disciplines that we practice today.
I love this. God grant me the serenity to love their best and never fear their worst. Yeah, that's going up on social media tonight. I love that.
Isn't that great?
So simple. So simple. Well, my friend, another great episode, another great couple of pages of Bill's genius, and certainly his concerns for his fellow man in and out of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and the fellowship. I mean, so much. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I know that have read things that Bill has written that aren't alcoholics, that are just amazed by it. You really don't, listeners, you really don't want to miss it. If you want to catch up on all these things, listen to the very end as we sign off, and you can find out how you can download every episode for fun and for free. Stick it on a flash drive, burn CDs, DVDs, whatever, give it away. All we ask is that you don't charge anybody for it. We do this for fun and for free, and we'd like you to do that as well. Right, Chris?
Absolutely, Monty, absolutely.
All right, my friends. Until our next broadcast, this is the Monty'man along with Chris S. and the rest of the Take 12 Recovery Radio family, and we are wishing God's perfect serenity for you. Bye-bye now. For more recovery workshops with Chris S. and the Monty'man, visit our website at take12radio.com and click on the Recovery Workshops banner.
This has been a broadcast of Take 12 Recovery Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.
This has been a Chicken and a Pig production.
Kitty, 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 kitty. Meow, meow, meow.
Woof, woof.